just because I've changed and I'm not as slender and dainty as I used to be when I was 25. I'm 30 now. That does not mean I'm not pretty.
Right.
It just means I've changed. And I actually think that's kind of beautiful.
Hello,
Welcome
or welcome back,
to the Womanly Podcast.
where we embrace womanhood in its entirety, from the hard and awkward conversations
To the silly and embarrassing moments.
an effort to reclaim and redefine what it means to be womanly in this crazy, wacky world. I'm Delana, the neutral one.
I'm Katie, the morbid one.
And I'm Madeline, the other one. And we're so excited that you've joined us today because there's room for you at our table.
So, grab your favorite drink and let's have a conversation.
What are you ladies drinking tonight?
I have a Topo Chico hard seltzer. It is in the flavor strawberry guava. I tried the mango. Was it just mango?
Tango mango or
Tango,
something like
yeah,
that?
something cutesy like that. And it tasted like soap, like a
Yeah.
really strong perfumey soap. So I'm trying a different one.
Madeline was like, after I eat these chips, my drink tastes like soap. And I was like, here, eat this candy. It tastes really good with the candy. And then she ate the candy. And then she was like, it still tastes like soap.
Yeah. I'm not big on I'm just recently kind of got into the seltzer water, the flavored seltzer water thing in the last year or so. And I'm still not totally there on hard seltzers yet. So it could just be partly that I've got particular flavors that I like.
Is this better?
This is better. Yeah, this one, I mean, it's not perfumey or like soap.
Yeah.
It's definitely more of a seltzer
An actual flavor.
experience. Yeah. So it's it'll do.
Good.
Good.
I'm drinking a pumpkin chai.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's
So I'm super cozy. Just keeping it cozy.
I also have Cayman margaritas if you want that at any
I
point.
will have one of those next.
Sounds good. I'll have one with you.
Yeah, we'll cue it up.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah.
I am drinking a hard seltzer Topo Chico as well. I started with the strawberry guava, and now I'm on to the tangy lemon lime. Yep, I got it right. Tangy lemon lime. Okay.
Well,
Every week, we like to check in with each other in a more creative way than just asking each other how we are. So, what have you done for yourself this week?
I let myself sleep in a little bit longer this morning because I was tired. And then I also, this is going to sound really stupid. I shower every night before I go to sleep. Last night I was exhausted, so I let myself go to bed without showering because I knew I was washing the sheets this morning or today. So I did that. I let myself go to sleep without showering. That sounds really dumb, but
No, it makes
No.
sense.
And then woke up this morning, showered, washed my hair and everything. So, but I let myself sleep in a little bit longer, even though I knew I was doing that. So yeah, just kind of giving myself a little leeway on some things on my schedule and my routine. Yeah.
Love that.
Okay.
This week I went to therapy.
Yeah.
That's what I
a
did for myself.
Yeah.
Didn't want to.
Yeah.
Did.
It was good.
I'm so proud of you.
Good. Good for you.
Yeah.
I have just overall just had a lot of grace for myself during a transition of my life that I did not expect. I'm going to be very vague. I'm not really willing to share the details yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's been a massive shift in my life that I'm like, I'm not pregnant, by the way.
Yeah.
It's just really crazy, and I'll share about it eventually, but it's been a huge adjustment, but there was a lot of emotional grieving and then adjusting to new things and stuff like that. So
Well, you've handled it like a champ.
it's just been a lot of grace and letting my kind of mental and emotional self take the front seat and just be we're going to go at your pace.
You are just like the picture of grace during this season. You really are.
Oh, thank you.
So You have handled it gracefully.
Thank you.
And it shows that you have given yourself grace, for sure.
That means a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I've been through a lot of therapy, so whenever it came, I was like, all right, I think I know how to handle this.
Yeah.
I know my tendencies and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Like, I'm just going to try to, like, stay aware of them and
Sure.
make space. And I have, like, told people about, you know, what's going on, and then they've just been like, well, like, they just try to get you to look on the bright side. And I'm like, I appreciate what you're doing, but I know that the most healthy thing for me to do right now is just fully feel exactly how I feel.
Yeah, we're like throwing ourselves back to one of our very early episodes where that was the exact same thing that we were talking about like letting yourself feel your feelings and that you have to sit in it a little bit to put a name to it, and you have to put a name to it in order to deal with it and move forward. So yeah. See, it's Taylor's all the time is what the three of us have been saying for a while.
And then today I came across this reel on Instagram from Marie Forleo. Do you know who that is?
Mm-mm.
She's well, she helps people grow their business, but she's also like a self-improvement guru type, but she's very, very real. Like, you know how those self-improvements tend to be all like hustle.
Yeah, perfection.
Yeah, but she's very like balanced. I really like her. And she was talking about like whenever an opportunity comes along, does saying yes to that opportunity make you feel expansive or contracted?
Yeah.
And even if that opportunity looks perfectly good on paper, you know, like if you looked at it, just read about it, you would be like, oh yeah, that's an obvious yes. And that's exactly how I felt in this situation, was like, oh, this should be an obvious yes to this opportunity that I have, but it felt so wrong that I was just like, I can't, you know? And I had heard her talk about that before, and her words actually kept playing in my mind. And I was like, every time I thought about moving forward, I was like, my stomach would turn, you know? And so I made a really hard decision and, gave myself a lot of grace after that.
Yeah, good for you.
Yeah.
This week, we are going to be tackling a topic that was actually recommended or requested of us by one of my dear friends, Jamie. If you're listening, this one is for you, but not just for you, for everybody. She wants us to kind of talk about our experience with being in our 20s, approaching our 30s, and what that's looked like. Yeah. Well, we're approaching our 30s. You are there. You have arrived
Katie,
as of this last weekend.
Katie just approached her 30s.
She got the big 3-0 this last weekend.
Yeah, so exciting.
It is exciting. Look at you. You've leveled up.
I actually think that's exciting.
Yeah.
Like, I don't say that just to be like I know so many people dread their 30s, and then people will say stuff like that to make them feel better. But I genuinely mean it. Like,
yeah, I do too.
I'm like, I can't wait to turn 30. I feel like 30 is going to be better than my 20s, and then 40s is going to be better than my 30s, and then 50s are going to be banging. You know? Like,
I agree. It's all about your attitude, right?
It is all about your
But there's
attitude.
a lot of people out there who talk about how like your 30s and 40s are like actually the prime of your life. A lot of people act like your teenage years, God, like Lord, no, please don't let that be
like
the
high school
best it ever gets.
Like, if that's the best I ever get, I'll just die right here. Yeah.
No, people will act like that, where it's like your teenage years, your college years, and then your 20s are the best years of your life. And it's like, but what if I want better?
Yeah.
Then you can make your 30s and 40s be the prime of your life. And
totally.
I think even, and we're not even talking about men's bodies, so we'll just even
leave that out.
An afterthought. But like, I think even for men that like they don't even reach their peak physical, like physicality or whatever, their form until they're in their 40s. So like, we've got a lot to look forward to. Totally. Not just us living the prime of our lives, but like our men, they don't even hit their peak until their 40s. We got a ways to go, ladies.
Yeah.
So true.
Yep.
Yeah.
So true.
So as much as like any of us have internalized that, oh, I'm not looking forward to being in my 30s and growing older, because in your 20s you do start feeling your age
Yeah.
in ways that you hadn't before, and we'll talk about all of that. But as much as we may have internalized some of those things, I think all three of us here are we try to celebrate it and remind each other that it's something to be excited about. So
Totally.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how it's been in our 20s, about how our bodies have changed, maybe not like in explicit detail, but just the way that we've noticed it and experienced it, dealt with it, and then also just how we've worked on taking care of ourselves as we approach that milestone. So
That was such a great setup.
Thanks.
Yeah. That was pro
Yeah,
right
I was
there.
excited about this episode.
Yeah.
Well, I think what we could start with, all of that being laid out, is even just kind of talking a little bit about our experience. I've got some like statistics and things that I've researched to talk about, but I'd like to make it a little bit more personal and even just addressing how much and how little you want to about your own experience in your 20s so far and what that's looked like and the struggles you've gone through and how you've dealt with them and stuff like that from a woman in your 20s perspective.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
Delana, y'all know at this point, Delana's been through a lot, even recently.
Yes, with my physical body, it has been a war in my gut. But even before all of that, I mean, I would argue that I was probably having gut issues back then that I didn't know about, but I always felt like, well, my relationship with my body started with, like, I remember very specific moments where, like, I remember one moment as a young girl, I was probably like 10 years old, and I noticed that my lower belly was a little bit bigger than everybody else's. That was a moment for me when that was like the first time that I remember like starting to not like my body.
Yeah.
And then I remember noticing that, and then I also remember noticing my legs, and I literally thought to myself, I have chicken legs. Like, I was like, I just had these little scrawny legs and then this little pooch. I was like, I started to feel really really not good about myself. And then as I got through my young teen years, I developed an eating disorder called orthorexia, which, had I not gotten significantly depressed, probably would have eventually turned into full-blown anorexia. Yeah. But I got significantly depressed, which caused me to then start overeating.
Yeah, she did talk about that a bit more in our bodies, beauty standards and all that episode. So
yes. Yeah. Definitely check that out for more details.
Yes.
But I did the orthorexia thing, I guess. And then after that, I was just like really depressed, and I had gained weight. And then for so long, I think I then went from like nitpicking all the weight on my body and wanting to be smaller, that then I flipped and I started like convincing myself that, oh no, I'm not gaining weight. Like, I'm good. Like, whatever, I can still eat whatever I want, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And I ate really, really bad, which definitely contributed to my gut issues. And I was also going through a whole hell of a lot at the time. Like, my parents were getting divorced and all this stuff. And I moved out on my own when I was 18, and I didn't finish high school and all this stuff. And so I then came into my early 20s, and I started to have some like weight fluctuation up and down because I was still struggling with anxiety and depression, but then also was starting to really feel some of my gut issues where like sometimes I would just feel like nauseous, like 24/7 for like a few weeks, I would just feel a little bit nauseous so that I couldn't like fully eat. Sometimes I didn't want to eat at all. So I would like lose weight for a little while, and then I would gain it back, and it just like kept going back and forth.
And then so hard on your body.
Yes, very hard on your body. And then come the past year, so much of my view and my love for my body has changed as I started to see a new doctor who is a holistic doctor, and she was able to finally officially diagnose my issues. But leading up to that appointment, I lost a lot of weight. And at that point, I now had a much healthier relationship with myself. And I felt really, really sad that I was losing weight, because I knew that I was losing weight that I used to like literally like almost would sometimes hear people that were sick and they lost weight because of it, and I would be slightly jealous of them. But then I was going through
You're
it
like, oh yeah, that's an added benefit.
that's
like
an added benefit. Yeah.
blessing in disguise, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And then going through it myself, it's like it doesn't feel like that. You're like,
No.
oh my God, my body is like shriveling up in front of me.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what it feels like. And then I lost a lot of weight, and now I'm starting to gain that back. And as I've started to gain it back, I have noticed some of those old feelings try to creep back in and be like, oh, that's not as pretty as it was whenever you were really sick, you know, and stuff like that.
Lies.
I know. And that's what I always like. Now I try to like catch myself, and I'm like, no, I am actually, it's working, guys. Good. I am actually transforming my mind. And then I'm like, no, this is like so good. This is so beautiful. And now I'm at a point where like I want to push my body, and I'm training for a bikini competition. Yay, announcement. And so I'm gaining muscle, and part of the reason I wanted to do it was because I wanted to see my body grow in a healthy way.
Yeah.
You know, I wanted to see it put on good weight and not, you know, and actually fully embrace all of those thoughts that I knew were going to come, that was like, oh, but you're not going to be like tiny and dainty like all the other girls. And sometimes I still get on Pinterest and you just see those girls that are like this big, you know, like the size of your pinky, and you know, for some reason there's this little thing inside of you where like, oh my gosh, that's so cute, you know.
Yeah.
But now I'm starting to like appreciate it from a distance, like, oh, I love that for them. I am over here doing my thing, and this is what's good for me, and I'm seeing the muscle grow, and I'm fighting those thoughts, and that's where I am now.
Yeah. I think for me, and we mentioned the beauty standards episode, I think that that's a good tie into this one in a way, that if, you know, you find that you need this conversation, maybe you need that one as well. But I actually, when we were recording that episode, I made an admission to like a new discovery about my experience with my body that I'd never told anybody before. And I actually cut it out the episode because as I was listening back to it, I realized I'm not ready to talk about that. Like this isn't fully realized yet. It's not something that I'm comfortable at, you know, really talking about yet. So I'll kind of reiterate some of those thoughts, just because it is such a huge part of my journey, so far. But I'll do it in a way that I think I'll be comfortable with. Before I do though, I feel like we should probably say, like we said that Katie was 30, Delaney and I are both 28. So we're 8 years into our 20s. We're not quite there yet, but we're getting dang close. But
we're approaching 30.
So I felt like that was an important knowledge if you're sitting there like, well, if you're in your 20s, where does that at? Because you could be 21 and you're in your 20s, but you're in a totally different part of your life than where we're at in our 28. So my experience with my body, there for a very long time, I've never been an itty bitty tiny person. Never. I've always like maintained a lot of muscle mass. I've always been really strong and not really had to try. I think a lot of that is genetics. Katie's nodding because she knows I've never been super itty bitty tiny. And I never really cared about that. I think my metabolism just kept up and I could kind of just do whatever I wanted, and didn't really have to exercise, didn't really have to really worry about what I ate. Now, had I done those things, I would have looked different. I had room to be, you know, leaner and capitalize on the muscle mass and all of that, but I just didn't really care. That was through, I think it was like 22, 23, maybe 22 that really started changing. And I started steadily putting on weight, and I never really stopped putting on weight. So I'm not currently at my heaviest, but I reached that in the last couple of years and have been working on trying to be healthier. My goal has always been health, but there's been an internal struggle that has existed there, and that there were many, many situations throughout my childhood and my adolescence, and even through college and adulthood, whenever I was leaner and smaller, where I had situations with men that made me feel incredibly unsafe. And I started wearing weight as a safety blanket. And I don't really, like I said, I went into detail when we recorded the last episode. I'm not quite ready to really go that far into detail about it yet, but I'll leave it at that, is that I have had an internal struggle where I wear my weight as security. So I do not like to be noticed. I do not like attention to be on me. I don't like strange men to be interested in my appearance. And I have found that about where I'm at now, and a little, obviously heavier than that, is a comfortable spot for me to be, where I'm no longer getting that attention. As I start losing weight, I'm at that point now as well, where I start losing weight, I start seeing that attention come back, and it's incredibly uncomfortable. And it's terrifying. And so there's a huge internal battle for me, in that it's, do I stick with my safety and security, supposed safety and security of not being noticeable in order to avoid things like what I've experienced in the past, or do I try to rid myself of those fears in order to cultivate a healthy body that's going to support me and carry me through the rest of my life. I want both of those things. I can't have both of those things. So that's kind of where I've been in the last handful of years, as far as like actual body weight goes. I know that I'm fully capable of losing the weight. I know I can do it. It's just that internal struggle. So that's been difficult for me. And that's about as plainly as I can put it. On the other side of that, I've, in the last handful of years, been diagnosed with an anxiety disorder that is, when left unchecked, incredibly debilitating. And I have had to go through extensive internal, internal rehab, refurbishment, whatever you want to call it, to try to figure out redecorating to try to figure out how to live with that in a productive way. And that has been complicated and difficult in its own right. But that really became something that I had to pay attention to, because it was manifesting, and it does usually manifest in a very physical manner for me. But I was having blood pressure issues, and this was many years ago, whenever I was not even at the weight I'm now. So it could have been related to weight. It could have been, but also at the same time, like, my body is physically healthier at this point than it was then, when I weighed less, but was like just ransacked with anxiety issues, blood pressure issues. I had infections. I had like significant, insomnia. I wasn't getting any sleep. Headaches. I mean, you name it. I have like a whole list of things that I'd kept track of, because I was trying to figure out what was wrong with me, that I was experiencing all of these things as a 24, 25-year-old person, who was relatively healthy in every other way. So that was kind of the start of my journey for a lot of things, where I recognized I was having significant health issues. And I started seeing a therapist. I started seeing a primary care physician every year for the first time ever. In fact, that primary care physician that I started seeing, I saw her multiple times within a handful of months, just because I was desperate to find the answers, and I trusted her. She gave me every answer I needed. And my one joke about this is that she was the second person to give me the anxiety diagnosis. And I went to her because I wanted a second opinion because I didn't believe the first person who told me I had anxiety because I was like, are you sure? And so I went to my primary care physician. I was like, she told me this. I just want to make sure. Yeah. Oh yeah. You have anxiety really bad. And then I was like, okay, well, I really trust you. I believe it. And then last year I saw a new therapist just to make extra sure that I had anxiety.
As an anxious person would.
So so I don't think I'll ever stop just making sure that that's what it is
Till the day you die.
until the day I die. Yeah, so I started a lot of my journey then, at least being intentional and realistic and understanding that things had maybe certain things like the anxiety had always been there, but it was starting to have an effect in a way that it never really did before physically. And my body wasn't like maintaining and managing it the way that it had previously been able to. And that really kind of threw me into a whole slew of just learning about my body and why things happen this way they do, and putting together my care team. And I think it's so important to have a care team that you trust and that you can, keep up with and all of that. So, and we'll talk about that more, but that for me has in the past been both my relationship with my body and my weight, as well as my mental health journey. And I'm still on that journey. I mean, it's been probably 3 or so years now that I've had that diagnosis, and every so often I find something else out that uncovers something new about that and how that affects my life. So that will be an ongoing journey as well. But mental health has been huge in the last handful of years, and even just having that realization about my relationship with my weight and why I've interacted with it the way that I have in years past. And that hopefully will, in therapy and in good time, end up helping me make new discoveries and reach new goals. So that's it in a nutshell for me.
Yeah. For me, I was always very dainty and slender, and that's the way I would describe it. I'm not going to use any more verbs or not verbs, adjectives to describe the way that I looked all throughout childhood, into my early teens, and even into my late 20s. And then I am the textbook, your body's going to change if you don't watch out. You don't take care of it, basically. And I was like, yeah, right. Like, probably never going to happen for me. I'm probably just going to be always the dainty, slender woman, And that all changed for me when I started on birth control. And it was rough. It started in my waist and in my stomach, and I was like, oh man, I hate the way this feels. I hate the way it looks. I just felt gross about myself. And it's been about 2.5 years since I've been off of birth control, not on birth control at all. And my body is still it is still recovering from all the artificial hormones and all of the things that birth control does to women's bodies. And I just had no idea the ways I would feel and the ways my body would change. Doctors just don't talk about that part. They just talk about how you don't want to get pregnant right now. Right. It's too hard to raise a baby. And so, I mean, you listen to your doctors and you just do that, Right. Go ahead.
Whenever I went to get my IUD removed, I was shocked. I mean, I guess they're my doctors, so they get to ask personal questions, but they were they really drilled. So what are you doing for birth control now? What are you doing for birth control? They really want, and I was like, we're just
like none of your business.
I was shocked. I was like, why does it matter?
Yeah.
Are you trying? What are you doing for birth control?
Yeah, that's bizarre. It's like, I'm
like,
not asking for
the nurse
family
practitioner,
planning.
the nurse asked me, and then the doctor asked me twice. Yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah. And I was like, just remove my IUD. That's all I want.
Yeah.
Okay. And we're going to do whatever the heck we want to do after that.
By the way, we'll talk a lot about like having good doctors, but there are doctors out there that just aren't, and I don't want to like immediately outright say they're bad doctors, although there are bad doctors out there. It does exist. They do exist. But it's totally 100,000% okay to question what they say.
Yes.
Take it from the person who sought 3 different opinions on her anxiety diagnosis. It's totally fine to ask those questions.
And it's totally fine that if you feel uncomfortable, even if they're doing something that may be right, you know, if you're uncomfortable, you can leave.
Yeah.
You know, like you can leave and you don't have to say anything, and you could just walk out if you feel uncomfortable, or if you're not able to do that, like you absolutely don't need to go back to them, you know, if they made you feel uncomfortable in any way. Like I'm not going to see that gynecologist again. Because
I would have told you not to.
They were like, do you want to book another appointment with her? And I was like, no
thank you.
I'll call whenever you're ready.
So anyway, I got off birth control and have not looked back. Never again.
Same.
And I'm not gonna go into it, like, but I just really believe that it really, really messed up my body and my hormones and depression and anxiety a lot. Like, it kick-started all of that for me. Yeah, so for me, I mean, that journey has just begun in the last couple years, where I feel like I look at my body and I'm not happy about it, but I feel like where I am right now, I feel like I feel like there are good days and there's bad days, just like with anything. There's good days with depression, good days and bad days with anxiety. I feel like that sort of goes hand in hand with the way that I look at my body. And, you know, I'm currently in therapy, and we talk about that sometimes if it's a particularly hard day for like my body image. But for the most part, like, I feel okay. Like, I just wear whatever I want to. I'm not worried about, like, I don't know. I just try not to worry about what people think. And I think for me, a huge part of my journey was getting off of social media, which, as you guys know, happened almost 3 months ago, and I haven't looked back. And I really do think that's had a huge positive impact on the way that I look at my body and the way that I just look at my general overall life circumstance as it is right now. But yeah, that's kind of my journey, and like I said, it has just begun a little bit. I mean, in my teens, like, I would be like, oh, I'm so fat. Like, I would literally be 110 pounds. And I never, thank God, never fell into any eating disorders or major things that would, you know, prevent me from being healthy. I believe that my weight has sort of been good for all of my, like, life.
Like, it's fluctuated in a healthy range.
Yeah, I feel like it's sort of flowed along with just my changing of age. But I know that I could definitely be healthier. There are definitely things I could do to, you know, make my body healthier, and those are definitely, you know, goals of mine to be the healthiest version of myself. But I don't look in the mirror and say, like, I try not to look in the mirror and say like, wow, like you're ugly,
Right.
you know, because that's just not true. I think
Yeah.
just because I've changed and I'm not as slender and dainty as I used to be when I was 25, I'm 30 now. That does not mean I'm not pretty.
Right.
It just means I've changed. And I actually think that's kind of beautiful.
It is.
So
And you are.
thanks.
And you are.
And you are.
And you are.
Thanks. And all of y'all are.
I think,
Of course.
I think that this whole issue actually stems from like this whole struggle with approaching 30 and how your body changes as you approach 30 and stuff like that is like, I almost feel like we're taught that our physical peaks happen in our 20s,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and that like we're supposed to look our best. And that's also whenever we get our careers
feel
together and
our
everything.
best.
Like it's not, it is not just like supposed to be one of the peaks of our life, but especially our physical peak
Yeah.
of our
Mhm.
life is that like we've lost any baby weight that we've had, you know, our hormones are not all whack when we were teenagers, you know, and
Right.
well, whose hormones are actually
Yeah.
not out of whack, but
Yeah.
I digress. Yeah, I feel like this all is like comes from the idea that like the inner turmoil that we face the later we get into our 20s is like this, oh my God, like it's all just downhill from here for
Yeah.
me physically. Like,
Yeah.
like, good Lord, I'm just gonna, and I think that a lot of people struggle with, especially women struggle with that, but I know men too, for
Oh,
sure.
yeah.
Struggle with this idea that like either
This is it.
yeah, I missed out on my physical peak if I
Yeah.
didn't feel like I was at my physical peak, you know, during my 20s,
Mhm.
or B, or maybe both, you know, B, I am, you know, everything is just gonna suck and get worse from here, you know, and
Yeah.
especially we've heard a lot of older people talk about like, oh, do this when you're young, travel when you're young, like blah, blah, blah. Your body is just like, oh, I'm too old and blah, blah,
Mhm.
blah, blah. And God, like they just make it all sound so awful, you
Mhm.
know? And I'm
They
like,
really do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The last generation's like, you better do everything while you're young because it's only downhill from here. I'm like, that's literally why I'm scared to have turned 30.
yeah.
Why? You know?
I think to an extent there's like a biological fact that whenever you turn 30 or you get close to your 30s, that's kind of the point where, and I don't know, I'm not a scientist, I've said that before already, but I at least have enough knowledge to say with some confidence that at a certain point in your 20s is whenever your cells are no longer regenerating faster than
Yeah.
you're losing them.
Yeah.
And so there is some truth to that, and that like as you get closer to your 30s, that at that point you do start experiencing some like bone density loss or like
yeah.
muscle loss, and
Mhm.
so you do start experiencing those things. So building muscle is probably going
Really-
to get harder
Yeah.
gradually, maybe, and maybe not for some people until later in their life, but there is some biological truth to what they're saying. However, the conversation and the attitude surrounding that could be so different, that it's like educating you on these things, and it's like it may be you may have to work a little bit harder for it, but it's not
Mhm.
impossible. Like
Mhm.
it's not impossible.
Mhm.
And the idea should be, the conversation should be to be building those habits early, so that as you get to that point in your life, you've got the habits built, you're already in a better spot for it, and it makes it easier as you get older to continue those healthy habits.
So I actually,
And to age.
Yeah, I actually think that, and this is, a lot of this is actually based off of a client that I worked with for over a year, where she actually had a YouTube channel that was about helping women in their 50s lose weight.
Mm-hmm.
And she talked a lot about like the hormonal changes and stuff, like a lot of the scientific thing. Now she would say the same thing. She'd be like, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist,
Right.
like obviously, but here's what I know.
Yeah.
And she was very effective in helping women lose weight. But one of the biggest things was speaking to women's mindsets about their bodies. And the other thing is that I actually think it's less of a, oh, well, this is just how your body is. And it's more of a, even though that is also true.
Yeah.
It's more of a, yes, this is how your body is. So you have to change what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's how you're going to care. What care looks like
This
for your
is-
body now, it was different from what care looked like for your body over here,
Yeah,
whatever, 10
exactly.
years ago.
Exactly.
And so like there's a lot of things that you can do to prevent density. And I don't think that it's harder. It's just different.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Um,
true.
I think that it may feel harder because it is different. You
Yeah.
know,
Mhm.
adapting to new ways of life is hard. But I actually think it's just a mindset shift of what once was good and healthy for your body may not be the best thing for it now.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And it's all about kind of understanding and being aware of even what that looks like. And for you, it could be totally different than what it is for me. I mean, I was reading different articles today and stuff, and they were talking about how whenever you get to that point where you start losing your muscle mass or you start losing your bone density and stuff like that, it's so important to have been working out with weights for so long.
Yes.
But not everybody can sustain working out with weights. So it's like as much, and God, we've said this in multiple episodes at this point, but there's no blanket answer for everybody.
Right, yeah.
And so it's really, really just important to understand where you're at, how you got to the point you're at, how you feel about where you're at, and then where you'd like to go. And then seeking out the care team that's needed, seeking out the routines that are needed in order to make those dreams a reality.
Yes.
So, hey friends, this is Madeline here, just coming to give you a little bit of an update on this episode. We did talk for a while, so we decided to make this a two-parter. We have so much more to talk about, and we can't wait to share it with you next week. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you then. Thanks so much for hanging out with us again for this week's episode of the Womanly Podcast. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media to hang out with us in between episodes and see pieces of our conversations that we don't get to include in these episodes, plus all of our bloopery humanness. We're on Instagram at Womanly Pod and TikTok, YouTube, and Twitter at Womanly Podcast. We hope to hang out with you more there. Have a super womanly week.